All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming. Get our panelists up here, Gil and Dan and Tracy. So while folks are coming up here, first I wanted to give a big shout out to Audio Globe, who's in the house right now. And for the first time ever, we are live streaming this. It's something we'd like to continue in the future. And a big reason, well, this is like not as it was planned, but a big reason that's important why we're live streaming it today is because Jason Fellman is not here. He had surgery on Thursday, so he's at home watching it on the live stream. So say hi to Jason. Okay, so we're gonna kick this off. This is our panel on social media, and I'm going to start down there at the end with Daniel Bozyk. And introduction, tell us a little bit who you are, Dan, and why you're here.
Okay, so I've been in Portland for a bunch of years. I got hired to come work for, anybody remember 101 KUFO? Like the last real rock station in Portland. So I got hired here to work there in 2003 and worked through KUFO at CBS and then 105.9 The Brew with iHeartRadio. And after that last gig, I'm like, I kind of want to work for myself. So with Jason Fellman's help, ended up working for JFL Presents and adding a bunch of clients on, doing a bunch of social media content and writing. And really just kind of spending more time focusing on the digital presentation of brands. So that's where I'm at now, mostly working with JFL on some of the awesome events that he's got put together, like Hair Fest and the brand new Wild Hair Country Fest that's happening this summer. So that's it. That's where I'm at.
All right, and then we have Tracy Gill Miller here, who is CD Baby's global marketing manager. So tell us a little bit more about what you do.
I'm Tracy Gill Miller, as he said. I work at CD Baby. I'm their international marketing manager. I do all of the marketing in Spanish, Portuguese, and Japanese. We do everything from content marketing to email marketing to social media marketing to PPC, SEO, SEM, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Cool. And then in the middle, we have GLASYS, fresh back from NAMM.
How's it going?
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I moved to Portland 2 years ago. I play keys. I sing a bit. I perform under the name GLASYS. And I've been focusing a lot on my social media following lately and having a little bit of success with that. So I guess that's why I'm here.
Yeah, and we're going to see a video now, which is your most successful effort on social media, I would say. Yeah.
So I overdubbed one of T-Pain's videos and went viral, and that's it.
Here we go. So we're gonna watch a video real quick.
I ain't even know it. Say to call you to the stage, then you seen the door, throwing that ass for days, booty going up, down. Got no problem spending all of my money trying to see what's up. I can do this all day like it ain't nothing. Black car, party in the backyard. Shawty got the black bra on. Tatted up, I forgot enough. She a bad man and she already know it all. Yes, you know it. Yeah, yes, you know it. She a bad man and she already know it all. Yes, you know it. Yes, you know it. She gon' make me spend some money on it. Oh, bank account, I'll blow it. Go do a show then, bring that dough in. Pockets bigger than nothing more in. I'm at the stage every time, started going. I'm like, yeah, started going, yeah, started going. Booty floating, slow motion. Oh, I'm so gone up the phone. I don't know how I'm getting home later on. Like, I ain't even know it. Said to call you to the stage. Then seen a nigga throw it, throw it, oh, that ass for days. Booty going up, down. Ain't got no problem spending all my money trying to see what's up. Now I can do this all day and like it ain't nothing.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit more about what's happening in that video and why it happened.
So it started with, I put up a video back in April last year where I started doing this thing where I'm finger drumming and playing keys at the same time. And that video got a lot of views on Facebook. And then this company that makes plugins reached out to me, asked me if I want to demo one of their vocal plugins. It's like a vocal harmonizer, which I'm using in that video as well. So I made a different demo song. I wrote this little song using that plugin, and I posted that one on Facebook, but also on YouTube and Reddit. And on Reddit, it made it to like the front page of like the video subreddit, and one of the comments I got was from T-Pain, and he was like, "Oh, this is awesome, dude. We should work together." That was, which is pretty cool. So I reached out to him and we chatted for a bit, but then he kind of disappeared after a while. So I decided to like try and get his attention somehow. So I made this video, and that one went viral. It got to like the front page of Reddit, got like 500,000 views in like a few hours, and then he invited me to record with him, and that's what we did. Thank you.
So there you go. It's an amazing example of how you can be creating work on your own, just kind of doing your thing, but have built somewhat of an audience on social media, and it can kind of take off to a place that you would have never expected. And I feel like that's something I've heard a lot from you, Gil, is that every time you produce a piece of content, you don't necessarily have any expectations for it.
Yeah, I have zero expectations because not every video is going to be as successful as that one, and I just know that. And I just treat it as like a nice surprise, you know, if something goes viral. But I just try to create as much content as possible, create stuff that would be like fun for me to watch, and you just post as much as I can.
So I feel like the question that I want to know is someone that publishes a magazine, and I think everyone in this, anyone that has a small business, whether you're a band or you know, a magazine like myself, is I want to know is, where do I invest my time? It's like, where do I know which platform I should be using? How do I navigate social media? Tracy, you want to?
I think the answer to that question is going to lie sort of where your audience is, and that might have you doing some soul searching in terms of like, who are the people that listen to my music or are interested in my product or et cetera, and where are they? So if you're making music that speaks to a demographic that is more sort of clustered, localized on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, that's where you should start putting your energy. And the only way you're really going to know that is if you just start sort of testing the water and seeing the response you get. You know, marketing in general, whether it's on social media or any other platform, is just one giant game of experimentation. You know, you put something out there, you measure the results, you learn from the results, and then you try it again and you iterate on what you did.
So it sounds like you're casting a really wide net and then you're narrowing that down. Like, what are results that you should look for? I guess, like, maybe each of you could speak to a little bit of, like, when you have had success with something, like, what have those results looked like? How do you know that it was successful? How do you know that something's successful, Dan?
Likes, shares, and views. I mean, those are the most common and the most obvious. I mean, you can say, especially when you see how fast something takes off. Sometimes it'll take a little bit, and then all of a sudden the right person will pick it up, and it'll explode. Or immediately you see that you've captured your audience, and they're immediately responding to it, asking questions, making comments. But yeah, when people share whatever your content is to their timeline, I mean, they're showing that that means something to them. So you've made that engagement. You've done something that is relevant to what they something that's relevant to how they something that they're engaged with.
Yeah, and for you, Gil, how do you know that something's been successful?
Yeah, you just see the results. Like if people are responding, you know, commenting, sharing with their friends. I guess that's the best indicator. If people want to show their friends what you've made, then you know you've done it right, and like you're posting in the right place. And yeah, as far as like which platform to use, like Tracy said, you know, just experiment and figure out like where your audience is. And it's good, I think, to be on a bunch of platforms, but like try to focus on one, because it's, you know, if you try to spread yourself too thin, you just don't really achieve much of anything.
So, I mean, for you, you just said, you know, if people are responding, you know, responses can be measured in a lot of different ways, but, you know, for you on YouTube, you get a lot of comments, right?
YouTube, and first I had like success on Facebook before YouTube. The YouTube thing came mostly from Reddit, which is a bit of a, like a, you know, a gamble kind of thing. Because Reddit, there's a lot of luck involved. I don't know like how many people use that website, but it's basically like you post a link, and if enough people upvote it, it goes up higher and higher up on the list, and then more people see it. But Facebook, I get more predictable results because I do some advertising, and and it's easier to tell like really quickly like just how engaging your post is. You know, some videos don't get that many likes or shares, and some just take off on their own.
So Gil just mentioned something that maybe a lot of artists or beginning artists don't think about is you said you do some advertising, you have a budget as an artist, as an independent artist. What does that look like for you?
So yeah, around like a year ago, I started experimenting with Facebook ads as opposed to just like, you know, boosting posts to like people who already like your page. I decided to try and target people, not necessarily from like Portland or this area, just people in general in Europe and in the United States who are potential fans of my music. So if you use the Facebook ad manager, you can get really specific about your audience and their interests and what kind of music they like. And they're even like, Facebook even makes it easier for you. They have like the lookalike audience thing, which I know you talked about on the podcast. So right now I have a budget of $5 a day. That's what I spend on Facebook ads, and that after a lot of trial and error, I have a pretty good ad now that I figured out like what my target audience is, and I can get like between 30 to 40 likes a day on my page.
So lookalike audience, the people in the audience know what that is. I mean, Gil's just not talking about hitting the boost button, which if you've been to one of these before, you've heard Jason curse about.
Never hit the boost button.
Never. Tracy, why never hit the boost button, and what is a lookalike audience?
I don't know that I would say never hit the boost button, because Facebook keeps sort of changing the way that it does things, and nowadays if you hit the boost button, you can actually go in and select which audience you're boosting that post to. So really the boost button just sort of saves you from having to go back into the ads manager.
A lot more now.
Yeah.
Boosting.
But a lookalike audience is basically where if you have a following of people, like say for example, Gil, you have people that you've, the ideal audience that you've created for yourself, you could sort of take that audience that you've made in Facebook and say, create a lookalike audience, and then Facebook will take that body of people that you have and say, all right, how many other profiles are similar or match these people that you've designated as being your target audience, and then it will start sending messaging to those people as well. So like, for example, something that we do with CD Baby is, we have a mailing list of people that we've built on our website, people that have signed up for our DIY musician newsletter or have signed up for and downloaded one of our guides, and then we can actually take the list of email addresses and upload it onto Facebook, and it will identify people who've attached their Facebook profile, or people that have attached their, have used the same email address that they gave us in their Facebook profile, and then we can identify them and then send ads to them. And then we can take it a step further and create a lookalike audience based on that, so then that actually extends our reach beyond just the people that have already signed up with us. So we could do something like, put an ad out to the people that have already signed up with us that's related to, customer loyalty or, getting them to do something further than signing up for a newsletter or signing their music with us. And then we could take the lookalike audience that we've built off of that and then use that to then say, hey, to these people who maybe have never heard of us or never heard of distribution, which, and with me, with what I do with international, a lot of people overseas are sort of still coming to terms with the idea that they can even independently distribute their music. A lot of people just don't even know that yet. And so I can then put out a message to them that's different that says, hey, you can distribute your music, or, here's a free guide to how to market your music, etc. And it's sort of a way that you can target your messaging to the different audiences that you're speaking to.
So I'm going to move this away from Facebook specific a little bit, but I also want to make a note that normally we have a microphone floating around the audience today. It's actually set up right on the side stage over here. So we're going to open the floor up to questions from y'all in the audience. And if you got a question, feel free to just make your way up to the microphone over here, and we will keep that conversation flowing. Charlie, you got to listen to the instructions. Yeah. Well, and he's making his way up there. So I wanted to, something interesting that there's been a lot of talk about specific platforms, whether it's YouTube or Facebook, but you're investing a lot of time and energy into a platform that as an independent artist you don't necessarily own. So I'm wondering if you guys have some examples of how artists, because Tracy talked about putting email addresses into Facebook to better target an audience, but you got to get those email addresses first. And then once you have those email addresses, you own those as something you can use to target your audience. So I'm wondering if any of you guys have some tips or techniques that you have done to take some ownership of some of these things and not be wholly dependent on a third-party platform in terms of what you are doing marketing direct to your fans.
Yeah, should I go first? Well, whenever I post a video, I always get comments like, where can I download the MP3 of this? So usually what I do is I let people, I give people a free MP3 if they sign up to my email list, and that way I get a bunch of new emails every time. It's nowhere as big as my following on YouTube or Facebook. It's not easy to get people to give you their email addresses in the first place. I think it's easier if you offer information, like coaching stuff, like ebooks and stuff like that. It's easier to gather emails that way, but with music, it's not that easy, but definitely just offering free stuff that they can't get in any other way helps.
And I think if you think a little bit about targeting as well with those email addresses, if you collect an email address and you're an independent touring musician, and you also collect a zip code too, then you know where those people are located in the U.S. or the world or Canada, and when you go on tour, then you got a really easy way to target a very specific audience, through your email campaign or even through social media as well, based on, knowing where those people are. But, speaking of offering something, I feel like CD Baby, maybe you can talk about a few of the things that CD Baby does offer.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we offer up free guides. We have guides covering topics, everything from how to fly with a guitar, to how to be successful with your playlisting strategy on Spotify. And so one of the things that we'll do is we have those available on our website, and you can download them if you give us your email address. And as soon as we have your email address, then we can, then the whole marketing machine begins, right? So that, as you were saying, content, et cetera, is a great way to go about it. Another thing that we have that is relatively new, started kind of mid last year, we purchased a company called show.co, and it actually allows artists to do what's called gated content. It's kind of exactly like what you were saying, but it's a platform that makes it real simple, and you can do everything from giving away a free download, or getting people to sign up for your Spotify playlist, or it could even be that you have exclusive video content that you want to share, maybe a tour of your studio behind the scenes, and in exchange for their email address, people get access to that content. And it's a real simple platform that attaches right to your CD Baby account. You can just go and have access to it for free as a CD Baby artist. But again, that's one of the tools that we offer. But as far as a strategy around it, I think the free content is really, or it doesn't even necessarily have to be free. It could be maybe an exclusive discount, or maybe give me your email address and I'll do something special for you, or let's see, we had one artist that
clean your house. Yeah.
Well, no, or if you buy my disc and give me your email address or something, I'll sign it for you, kind of thing. We had one artist group that agreed to sign every physical copy of their disc that they sold, and they normally didn't sell physical copies; they only sold digital copies. And they already had a fairly substantial following on YouTube, and they ended up sitting at CD Baby's headquarters and signed about 40,000 copies of their disc. But things like that are, sort of little tips and tricks you can try to get people excited about what you're doing, and get them to do what you want them to do, whether that's buy your music, listen to it, like your post, or just give you their email address.
Cool.
Right,
do you want me to jump in?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So thank you all for being here and answering these questions. I'm wondering, how often do you post or upload content on the various platforms, and also how often do you then respond when other people put out comments on those in response to what you've posted or put out?
I mean, at what rate do you generate content? I mean, if you can put something new up every day, put something new up every day. You're not really wasting the effort, but you definitely want to space it out at regular intervals, and you always want to respond to anybody that comments or makes some kind of, shows an appreciation for what it is that you put up. I mean, you definitely want to engage with anybody that shows some kind of appreciation for what you've got up there.
Okay, cool, thanks. And
I would say that, just post as much good content as you can, but make sure it's really good. Don't just post for the sake of posting. Like, if I could, I'd post a new video every week, but unfortunately I can't because it takes time to create this stuff. But I think like the most successful YouTubers, for example, are those who like every week put out a new video, like clockwork. And as far as responding to people, just respond to everyone, even the silly questions and like just everything, because like people will become more engaged. They'll become bigger fans if you write back to them.
And even when you have this great success like you had on this recent one, you would still just make every effort to respond to those 500,000 people. If, let's say, all of them put a comment out, like, way to go, Gil.
It took me a few weeks, but
Okay, cool.
I tried to respond to everyone.
Good to know. And I'm a CD Baby artist, so I'd love to hear any more comments you have on how to maybe use your CD Baby account in conjunction with other social media or your own website.
First and foremost, I would say if you're not checking your CD Baby trending reports and analytics, definitely do that. Because, again, that's going to give you information about where your fans are living, what they're listening to. It'll even tell you, what playlists your music is appearing on Spotify. So I would definitely start there. And then show.co is, again, a new addition that is, we actually have a lot of even major label artists that are using it. Like Britney Spears used it recently. So it's like major label tools that we've made available for independent artists. So it's really great to check it out. But yeah, kind of to sort of follow up on what you were saying, with the social media platforms, like, consistency is king. Just don't post something and then wait 6 months and post something else. And then as far as being responsive, I think it's even a little bit more than that. Definitely respond to the people that are interacting on your page, because that's the great thing about social media is it's not just a platform for you to just talk at people. It's a platform for you to actually engage with people, and you can continue communicating with them. But also you can even take it a step further and actually go and share your content on Facebook groups and other pages, and on Instagram, for example, you can be out there putting your content available, and then actually interacting with other pages that have similar content with yours. I heard a really great strategy recently, what they were calling it the 19-cent strategy, and it was for Instagram specifically, but I think it could apply for multiple social media platforms. And it's where the idea of giving your 2 cents, when you're giving your opinion on something. And the idea was try to give your opinion or your communication, you just make a comment on something at least 9 times a day. The idea is that's your 18 cents. I can do math. Your 18-cent strategy of, 9 times a day, you give your 2 cents, that's 18 cents. And even if it's just something as simple as hey, great work, I really like what you did, or, that looks awesome, etc. And that just, creates a dialogue with people. Or find hashtags that are specifically relevant to the audience that you're trying to get at, and follow those hashtags and interact with them.
Cool, thank you all. That extra cent for the 19 cent, it was just a good luck penny you added on top.
There you go.
That's something huge I think that Tracy is touching on there. If you're an unknown artist with no audience, or your audience is literally only people and your friends, and that can only go so far. She's talking about getting to other places where there are audiences that would be interested in what you're doing, and that's the beauty of social media, is that that audience can be unlimited, and it's not going to be easy. It's going to take time and effort, and you're going to have to do like Gil did to figure out where that audience was, but it's out there for you if you want to put it in there. Charlie?
I've sort of developed 3 questions while sitting here, so I guess answer one of the 3 if you feel like it. But first of all, I've noticed when I post social media, it's really time consuming, finding all the hashtags, all that stuff, plus cross-platform posting is a nightmare in a lot of cases, because it's not, while every effort I'm sure is being made to make cross-platform posting easier, it still seems complicated even when you use whatever third-party software is out there. So like, what tools do you guys use to speed up that process? Both like any kind of social media, like hashtagging or whatever you can use to basically drive more traffic to your posts. And then like, how do you battle the quality versus quantity? Obviously, Gil, you had sort of touched on that earlier with your videos. You're like, I'm not going to post every week because I can't get the quality that I desire. So then like, at what point, because obviously consistently posting is the name of the game, but keeping a high quality while consistently posting, like where does that lie with you? And then I guess the third question I had while sitting here is like, how did you find your audience? Like that, obviously it took you like a full year, but being social media gurus, like that's always been my problem is like, I don't know who the fuck likes my music. And so it's like, but people just sort of come out of the woodwork, especially when I was in Pseudo Boss. It was like people I'd never had expected were like, dude, your music's awesome. Like, whoa, what? And like, but finding that, like, what do you do in that? So I guess maybe all three or one, or I don't know. Sorry to bombard with questions as usual.
Okay, so the first question was about management
tools,
of social media, like how, really, especially for someone working at CD Baby that is communicating across all platforms, or Dan, like you're working with clients that want to focus different efforts in different areas. How do you manage and track all that kind of stuff, and what kind of tools are out there?
Man, I use scheduling tools for pretty much all the platforms that I use. Facebook is great, especially now that they've added scheduling options to like events. So you can have something as soon as the event's over, the morning after the event. Hey, thanks everybody for coming out. Show us your pictures from the event. So like that. But I use, like a tweet deck is great. I'd schedule out tweets. OnlyPult is another platform that I use for doing Instagram. And that's got a lot of great tools. OnlyPult, ONLYPULT. I like that one quite a bit. But yeah, there's the more you can plan that stuff out. I mean, it's not all going to happen spontaneously. Sometimes you have to put a lot of time into writing it, and sometimes you're going to want to post to happen in a time that it's not convenient for you to do it. So yeah, I would recommend finding some way to do scheduling on every platform that you use.
Yeah, and you might need a mix of multiple tools, which I'm sure I can speak to a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there are some aggregation tools, like Hootsuite is one that you can use where it pulls all of your social media platforms into one, and you can go in there and be like, I'm going to post this one thing, and you can literally select which platforms you want that tweet or post or whatever it is to go out to. That being said, I don't know that I would necessarily recommend doing it that way, just because like each social media platform has its own vibe, its own pulse to it, and so if you're just posting the exact same content across all the different platforms, you're going to make people really bored really fast. So it's not something I would recommend doing. I mean, honestly, what we do exactly what you were stating with, just scheduling things out, as far as building a strategy. You could even, like if you have an event coming up that you're going to be doing, like get your stuff ready in advance. Know what you want to say. Get the hashtag so it's just ready to roll. Imagery, etc., ready to roll. Or you could even just like once a week, like maybe every Sunday, just sit and schedule out, I'm going to post 3 times this week. And, again, consistently posting doesn't mean that you have to be posting constantly. Consistently versus constantly is a very different thing. As long as it's regular, it could only be once a week, once a month, whatever it is. But as long as it's consistent, as long as you don't just feel like make your audience feel like you've completely vanished because you just stopped posting for a year or whatever. But yeah, so just plan it out in advance. You can just schedule everything out, and then you don't have to think about it again.
But really important about what she said there is a specific language to each of the platforms. And there's one thing that just sticks in my craw is seeing that tweet that's like 10 words and then a FB link. It's like, all right, you've basically just shown everybody you don't give a rat's ass about this platform. I mean, there's a case to be made for it, but still you're not using it to the best of your advantage.
If you're linking your Instagram to Twitter, find a way to make your images display, Instagram's owned by Facebook now, so it doesn't like Twitter, but you can Google it. You can do an if this then that thing, and your pictures will show up on Twitter, and you'll get much more, better interaction. And that's one way to do one thing on Instagram and have it immediately work to Twitter with the image showing up. Again, we at the magazine we use something called Buffer, which is actually a Portland company. It's similar to Hootsuite, but I found that if Facebook is one of your focuses, you should really just be doing that stuff on Facebook, because the scheduling on there is great. You can, pre-tag people when you schedule that stuff out. Facebook wants you to be on Facebook, and you're going to have to be on Facebook if that's where your audience is. I think that, Tracy brought up this consistency. Tell me, what did you say again?
Consistency versus constancy.
It was good. It was good when it came. But I mean, I think that that also goes to Charlie's second question, that was about the quality, and I think I've heard Gil talk a couple of times.
Wasn't that his third question? What was the second? I don't.
He's got more. Don't worry.
Sorry. Okay.
So I mean, I think that I've heard Gil talk about this before in terms of the types of posts that you put out there, and how they shouldn't just be super self-promotional. You can speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I try to avoid like the posts of just like, come to my show, or please share this, or those kind of really like blatant like self-promotion things, because people just don't really engage with them because it's not very interesting, and it's kind of annoying if your feed is just full of that stuff. So I try to focus, I just try to ask myself, like, what would I want to see if I were following this page? What would be engaging to me? What would I want to share with my friends? What would I want to comment on? And for me, I figured out that it's mostly like jam videos and stuff like that. And I shoot them with my phone. They're not like super polished. I don't spend ages on them, but I do try to make them as good as I can. And I do listen to people, so I hear out like what people really liked about the videos, and then I try to make the next one even better. So I think that's key, like listening to your audience without like compromising your own like artistic vision, just finding that right balance, and just try to make it as unique and interesting as you can. Figure out what the qualities in your music that really stand out are, and like try to improve those.
So if you have like a show coming up in a month, and you do want to post about it every day, every couple of days, what are some things that people could do to keep talking about that show, but not in like the super blatant like come to my show? I mean, what are more interesting ways of things that people can share, and then relate that back to the fact that they have a show upcoming? You guys have any ideas on that?
Well, for one, like my audience is all around the globe right now, so I would not, like, if I have a show in Portland, I'm not just going to post to everyone like come to my show in Portland, because it's just like all the other people they're not going to engage with it. It's uninteresting to them. So I would just create an ad that's targeting the people from Portland that are following me, and they'll see it on their feed. I don't have to post many times because the ad will show up in their feed anyway, like quite a lot.
But I mean, just as far as getting people excited about your tour in general without necessarily blatantly being like, hey, come to my show, or et cetera, you could do stuff like in the rehearsal room prepping for X tour coming up and get people excited that way. Or you could, do something to do with what you're eating, fuel for my show that's coming up. Like, it just sort of show a little bit of who you are, and then sort of figure out a way to tie it back to the thing that you're actually wanting to talk about, but in a more indirect way.
Yeah, I wonder if any of you guys have also seen things like that, where you can kind of like light a fire, where it's not just me as the artist talking about the show, but then getting your audience to also talk about the show. So if you guys have done anything yourself, or seen any campaigns online where you see that a lot of the promotion is happening through the artist's actual fan base versus the artist talking, because they've reached out asking them to share something they're excited about or engage in a certain way.
One of the things that Jason Feldman always gets really excited about is the invite everyone graphic that appears on pretty much every single event that he puts out. And really, it's not much to ask to activate your community to say, hey, do us a favor and add some names to the invite list on this event. I mean, Facebook works really well that way, but I don't. There's nothing wrong with asking your audience to help you out, and as long as you word it correctly and don't expect anything, just say, hey, it'd be really cool if you added a few of your friends to this list that you didn't know were already going, or something like that.
You can also do like the raffle thing, or like the giveaway, 2 tickets to whoever shares this post. I mean, like, you know what I mean, like a raffle thing. I haven't done it, but I know that some people are successful with it.
Yeah, definitely. There's always options for tagging people, and then like keep building up that content stream and engagement stream and stuff like that. Definitely. Yeah, and I mean, and I think that that's like a really important point too, is like thinking about how you're building community online and off, you know. So Dan, I'm sure that you have a lot of experience with some of the events that you've worked at, is that it seems like when you go to the actual show, it is like this really strong, tight-knit community there as well. Yeah,
we built a really awesome network of dozens of bands that promote each other's shows, and everybody knows each other, so it's really cool to like to support other bands on your page that you're a fan of, or bands that influenced whatever your art, your music, your band is doing. You should definitely be sharing those commonalities. I mean, talk about the stuff that it shouldn't always be about your shows and your content. I mean, it's really good to be able to share that stuff that you just have in common with the people that like what you do.
Definitely. Anyone else feel like they have burning questions? I feel like there's so many questions on social. Oh, sorry, I couldn't see you over there. Go for it.
Sure. So a lot of kind of what I'm hearing is from the standpoint of artists that are out becoming artists, and they're kind of concentrated on one thing. Do you have any advice for folks that are out, like say in this day and age, as a working player, that it's like everything else, you find yourself having 3 projects or 4 projects that you're working on, and it's not just the one thing that you're able to focus in on and try and find a direct audience, pardon me, for that. Is there any suggestions that you have to be able to say cross platform's not really a good thing, but if you're looking at me and what I do, to be able to see these multiple things that I do and kind of get on board with more than one thing that's going at a time?
I would say I would then maybe turn around and ask you a question of like, how are you handling your personal brand? Like, do you have your own brand as a working professional?
Right, I have my own personal brand, but within that brand, I may have a project that does this or a project that does something else, but it's all based from I do have a personal brand.
Well, see, that's what I would say would be the answer to focus on. Like, if you have so many disparate projects that you're working on, the one unifying factor is you as a musician or you as a brand. So you focus on that, you build your audience around that, and then you can, you know, like if you have a social media page for yourself, a website for yourself, you then can share what you're doing as a person on those pages. And you can, you know, even if, say you are working on 3 different projects, you have a reggae band, a metal band, and a, I don't know, classical band or whatever, right, and if they're like completely unrelated, you can still talk about those things and just target them at different audiences depending on what you're doing. That being said, other platforms like, say, Instagram, it might actually make sense to have different Instagram pages for each of the projects.
And I do.
But on certain platforms, you can actually just do all of them on one and focus on you as, you know,
as
a person who has, right, as the brand, an individual who has many interests and many talents.
Cool, thank you.
I mean, Gil, we got a question right there. No, go for it.
I hope that this question isn't taboo, but I wanted to ask about Snapchat, because I work with a couple artists who their predominant audience is located mostly on Snapchat, and it's kind of a beast.
I've never used it.
I am the oldest young person you'll ever know, and I also don't use it.
Wrong panel.
I know, right?
I'm sorry we failed you on Snapchat. Anyone in the audience have any advice on Snapchat? Anyone?
I kind of got the sense that like after Instagram and Facebook ripped off Snapchat stories, right, like that not as many people are using it. So I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think that there's something interesting to the fact of like stories, this like live element, which I think is becoming much more of a favored trend across platforms, and something that seems to be that audience are engaging with. Like obviously that you're finding that people are. We talked a bunch about scheduling up here, you know, but maybe Facebook has specifically said that they want to have like more real-time engagements, and that's like why they're preferencing like some of the live videos that they do as well.
risky in terms of return on?
Yeah, Google it. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to how you go about tailoring your ads when you're creating them, whether you have different goals for different ads that you're making, like if you're, and different ways of tailoring them for different platforms. Like if you're promoting a video, like a new piece of content, are you generally driving views to that content? Are you looking for likes on your overall page? Or are those different strategies and you take different approaches for different ads?
I've tried different things, and just through trial and error, I've figured out that for me, it's best to just have one ad that, and the goal of that ad is to get just page likes. And then when I post new content, I don't boost that or create ads for that. And it'll get however many views as it gets. Some of it gets more shares, some less. But I prefer to just focus on building up the actual following. And for that ad, it took me a long time to get a really good return on that ad. So I just, at first, I created a bunch of ads with different audiences. I tried targeting people who like certain bands or people who like certain brands of keyboards and stuff like that. And I just figured out what works best. And then after I built up my page to a few thousand likes, I started using the lookalike audience thing, which I would not recommend using if you don't have much of an audience yet. But once you've built up your page to a few thousand likes, then Facebook can be okay, this is what your target audience is, this is what they like, and then the lookalike feature will work really well. But yeah, having said that, it really depends on your goals. If you want people to sign up to your email list, that might be the goal, and Facebook has great tools for that as well.
Okay. So do you do your ads primarily on Facebook alone, or do you also do YouTube and other platforms?
I don't do YouTube. I find it really expensive, and I've tried it once and it just wasn't worth it. I've tried Instagram as well, and it's okay. It's I find that for what I do, Facebook is the best. But it might be different for other projects,
And I think that's something big that Gil, when he's talking about doing a lot of this stuff, is he's got a very long-term strategy with this. And was it necessarily that way from day one? Was there this well-thought-out strategy in the very beginning?
No. I started just experimenting with the ads. At first, I created quite a few. I probably wasted quite a lot of money on that as well, but it wasn't a waste ultimately because it got me to where I am right now. So just try targeting different audiences, and I would even recommend reading a lot about the ad manager because it goes really deep. Just learning about the different features, different parameters and everything. And yeah, when you try to target your audience, I would try to narrow it down as much as possible. So when you're creating an ad, it'll tell you how big your audience is. And if it's millions of people you're trying to target, your ad is probably not going to do that well. I would try to narrow it down to tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people, because then you know that your ad is more specific, and it's and if you really if you're targeting the right people, then it's going to do well. Yeah. And if not, then just try again.
See, I actually find the opposite than that. The larger the audience, the better the ad performs. But again, I think it kind of depends on what your goal is. For what we're doing, if we're doing a campaign, for example, right now we have an offer running where we're discounting our album submission cost or price. And so I find that actually when I put out, that's just a straight, hey, save money kind of advertisement, which, bringing that over to an artist could be hey, my band has a discount on T-shirts that we're selling right now or something. Click here and save, use this coupon code and save 20% on our band T-shirt. I find the larger the audience, the better those ads perform. I don't know, maybe that's just
that hasn't been my experience, but yeah. Yeah,
and it's not a one-size-fits-all solution because one of the earliest panels we did was here at the Doug Fir with the booker at the time, or one of the managers, and he had said, he's look, I got a room that fits 300 people. He's I'm not trying to target even 5,000 people to come to this show. He's I'm trying to target 600 people that are really actually interested in this, and then if half of them come, I've got a sellout, So again, it's like knowing, who your audience is and what you're trying to get them to do.
Well, and I think it's a bit of a numbers game. It's like if you put out an ad and, like for example, with like emails, email marketing, for example, and we could send out an email to 1,000 people, and your typical open rate, and if you get this, it's actually really good, is like 15%. And then from there, you get 2 to 3% of those people actually click on your email. So if you're that out of 1,000 people, 15%, that's what, 150 people, and then you get 2 to 3% beyond that, that's what, 20 or 30 people. Like, that's not a lot. But the thing is if you think of it in those terms, then the larger the audience, the better, just because, again, at that point, it's a numbers game. So it's like, you might only be targeting 500 or 600 people, but if you go into it expecting that only 10% of them are even going to pay attention to your ad, then that suddenly brings your pool down to like 60 people, and you're kind of going, okay, well, that's not a lot. And then you have to expect that even if those 60 people that actually saw your ad or saw what you were trying to do, only 2 to 3% of them are actually going to take action and purchase or attend or whatever it is, the action that you're trying to get them to do. So at that point, then it becomes more beneficial for you to have a much larger pool of people that you're targeting with your ad.
Got a question over there?
I do, yeah. One of the things that I actually ran into this last year, and I think it relates to how you measure success, right? So the focus of the panel a lot of times is how to rock your success through social media marketing. For me, I really was looking at my measure of success being having the ability to get endorsements from companies that I could not afford for some great product. And I reached out to some companies thinking that my social media reach was large enough that I might warrant some sort of artist discount. And I got my ass kicked in a really good way. They just, the person that called me back asked what my reach was, say, on Instagram and Twitter, and they said, what do your Instagram followers look like? And I said, well, I'm not. And he said, I can tell you exactly. He did his research, and he came back and said, yeah, you're nowhere near what we need. We need a couple 100,000 followers. We need to have, your consistent social media posting, hitting a target audience that's enough to warrant us giving you something. So I realized I had a lot of work to do, and looking at how I could measure success, it was not intentional, but one of the my opportunities in music, I get a wide audience of a lot of touring, and I get to do a lot of video posting. And so this really relates to a question I have about, I do a lot of Facebook Live videos, and even just running into some people here that I hadn't seen in a long time. Oftentimes people say, I love seeing what you're doing on Facebook. I love seeing you out on the road. And I kind of joke saying, oh, it's just me with Photoshop posting pictures on whatever. But because I don't want to gloat, right? A lot of them want to do the Facebook Live posting. It's really just about sharing the experience with people. I got kids at home. I want them to be on stage with me. But if I look at how I could maximize sort of the success of that, having more visibility, more likes, more clicks, more shares, some of the shares that I have, or some of the posts that I have, really thousands of people have been sharing it. And I see, well, okay, there is some marketability with that. But I know that this disparity between YouTube and Facebook, the videos, I'm always wondering, would it be better for me to shoot video at, say, backstage where I'm behind the drum cam and sharing the experience, editing the video, posting on YouTube, then sharing it on Facebook? I know that Facebook limits the audience, right? So if you're posting a YouTube video, they're not going to share that as openly as if you were sharing Facebook video. So I know that the viral Facebook algorithm thing that was going around, that was really a joke the last couple weeks. There is an algorithm, right, that limits at least video sharing. So could you touch on maybe the success viability of using YouTube and sharing that on Facebook versus doing a live Facebook feed? I know, Gil, you've done this a ton, but yeah. I think all three could probably touch on it. Thank you.
Any platform is obviously going to favor content that is native to that platform. I mean, there's just no way around that. They want people to see it more on Facebook video. Facebook wants you to see the Facebook video more on Facebook for sure. Same with Google and YouTube. So, if you want to create a version of that works on both platforms and post it both ways, I mean, if views isn't the primary measure of your success, if you just want people to see it, then you want to put it in as many places as you possibly can.
Yeah, anything that'll... anything that's basically a link to another website is not going to do well on social media because they want to keep you on their platform. So posting a link to YouTube, not many people are going to see it as opposed to like a Facebook video, which keeps people on Facebook. And I say, like, if you're having success on Facebook with your videos, just stick with that and focus on that and put it on YouTube as well. But like, if you're getting the results you want on Facebook, then that's great. You don't need to, like, my success on YouTube has been, there's been a lot of luck involved. I won't lie about that, the Reddit thing. And it's kind of hard. It's not predictable, but on Facebook, like, my results have been a lot more predictable, so I can really, like, share information on that.
What is your strategy when you're posting videos? Do you post the same thing to Facebook and to YouTube at the same time?
Most videos, unless it's like the really short, like, live clip, that, some things just don't work well on YouTube, like they would on Instagram or Facebook. But for the most part, I post on both. And I think, like, from what I see, like, the YouTubers who are really successful, they'll post content all the time as much as possible, and they'll do a lot of, like, clickbaity kind of stuff, the kind of stuff that, like, shows up on searches, a lot of covers. If you cover, like, a new pop tune that's now, like, #1 on the charts or whatever, it'll get a lot more views. And you can try Reddit as well. Like, if your stuff has that kind of, you think it has that kind of viral quality to it, just post it on Reddit. Just be careful, like, they're very strict about their, like, self-promotion rules. So only, like, 1 in 10 posts can be to your own channel. So you have to be, like, an active Reddit user if you want to use that platform. But some musicians have had, like, ridiculous amounts of views just through Reddit. It's crazy.
I would say, as far as, I think there's sort of two questions or two sides to what you're saying there. There's, video content that you put on YouTube versus video content that you then take that video file that you put on YouTube and also put it on Facebook. And I think that there is value in doing that because, again, you're not going to get the same results putting a YouTube video on Facebook. But the Facebook Live videos, that's different than just uploading a video, because you're actually, then it becomes two things, because then you have video content that will live on your page that then people can go back and view, and you'll also have something that's happening in the moment that you can then use to, like, promote, hey, we're going to go live this Saturday, which is exactly what we were doing for this event. We're going to go live, come check us out, etc. And then it becomes something that you can get people engaged with. And then also Facebook recently just announced that they're going to be actually favoring that stuff with their algorithms. So that kind of content is actually going to be shown more to your followers, etc. So I think it's good to do both. And I don't, in this particular instance, I don't think there's a problem with having the same content on two different platforms, because you have a different intent with it. YouTube is a very different beast than Facebook. And then furthermore, with YouTube, you can do things like embed that video on in other places like Reddit or in other people's websites, etc. So there's value in having it in both places.
I just want to add that YouTube, you can go live on YouTube as well if you tried that. Yeah, so you can do the same thing and see how it goes.
Or Instagram, just shorter, or Twitter or something. I don't know, everything. Snapchat?
Just do everything all the time.
Yeah, over there.
Yeah, so this question kind of got asked a little bit earlier, but, like, if you are in a band and a lot of your fans primarily now are just your friends and your family, and you're kind of starting out, and this idea of finding your audience, what are first steps to being able to do that in a way that's strategic and not chaotic?
I would say you could ask your friends and family, like, when they hear your music, like, what does it remind them of? Like, other bands, what do you sound like? And once you get, like, some kind of consistent answer, I would try experimenting with some ads on Facebook. Maybe use like a great photo or a live video. A video or a live video is better than a photo for your ad. And just try targeting different people who like those bands. You could start with just the U.S., or just, like, even Portland or whatever, Just experiment, and you'll see the results pretty quickly.
I think in that particular instance, you could probably use Spotify as a social media platform in that regard, because you could find other playlists that have similar music to yours and start interacting with those playlist owners and see if you can get them to share your music on their playlist. Or you can find playlists that are open to where anybody can share anything, and so you can kind of go and just start attaching your music to other similar music and see if you can get followers that way. And then the great thing about Spotify is that it gives you demographic information. And again, if you're a CD Baby artist, we also give you demographic information on your Spotify plays. But then you can use that demographic information on other platforms. So, like, if you know that most of your followers or listeners on Spotify are within a certain age range, they are in a certain area of the world. You can then sort of, and then, you know, clearly they have an interest in your genre. You can then use that to go over to Facebook, plug in that same information, and then start, you know, taking some stabs in the dark, kind of like what Gil was saying about, like, you know, are they interested in this particular keyboard, or are they interested in this particular band, etc. You know, you could maybe even use examples of other musicians on that playlist that you're also on, to sort of just start experimenting and see what you get. And it could be, you know, you're going to end up with campaigns that you're just like, well, that was a big flop. And you learn from it, and you say, okay, well, that didn't work. Let me keep trying, and we try something new and see what results I get next. And then as soon as you find something that really works, go with it.
Yeah, Charlie, how about you?
Just to add on to that, they're doing a lot of advancement in AI, especially Spotify. So there's this thing called Discover Weekly, and the way it works is it basically aggregates what you listen to and compares it against bloggers that are tastemakers and stuff. The other thing they do too is they have, like, you can literally let these companies do the work for you in a sense. So if you have your music on Spotify, it says other artists who sound like these guys, and you can use that to develop your core. Obviously, if you don't have very much listenership, just like Gil said, it's the same sort of idea with the Facebook similar audiences that they're generating. So you have to have some kind of like seed to generate that list. But essentially, if you can get the DNA of your music into these sites, they can start generating this information for you, which then you can it sort of becomes this feedback loop. Obviously, you want to be careful because if you don't want it to go in a certain direction, you can guide that hand a little bit. But that I would look into, because music curation, like in LA and New York City, this is like the topic. It's like, how do we get new music into people's hands that they wouldn't normally find? And like, honestly, just Google the Discover Weekly AI platform. It's really, really neat stuff. It sort of like takes Pandora, but like flips it on its head, because it actually uses, and if you guys aren't familiar with Hype Machine is an awesome blog aggregator. And that's what they use to generate. It's basically a real-time live playlist of like taste-making songs. Anything that anybody's blogging, it'll post that song in real time, and you can just listen to that playlist as different blogs are posting. But that's where they get the songs that they compare against what you're listening to. And so the Discover playlist is 30 songs each week. That's half songs that you're already familiar with, and the other half is stuff that they think you'd like, which is sort of what the radio industry had been doing for years. Like when they introduced Hey Ah, the Outkast song, when it first came on the scene, it flopped, and it was because they didn't put it next to songs that were similar enough for you to like. And then they changed their whole platform so that they sandwiched it in between two really popular songs. Then you started to like Hey Ya, and then it like became the hit that everybody knows now, and like those kinds of things. So Spotify's sort of building on that. But anyways, that might be useful information for you.
I mean, I'd say that finding an audience, go analog, maybe get offline. Like finding an audience is like building a community, is like, finding the people maybe that are like in your Portland music community or that are similar to you, like that Dan touched on, that is like who is appropriate to play on a build with you. See how you guys can piggyback off of each other's audiences and, engage with each other to build that. Like who has a little bit higher profile than you? Like what are like the real world physical connections that you already have that you can take advantage of? Because it is, it's the online social media, every social media platform's not gonna work for everyone. There are plenty of musicians out there that have, are working musicians that really do nothing on social media. You're always like, this guy is literally not Googleable, but yet he's an artist that has been working for 20 years releasing records, and he was doing that in a totally analog way. It's all about finding the right mix for you.
I mean, if you're starting out now, then you'll want to be on social media for sure. But yeah, someone who like started, 20 years ago when that wasn't even available, and he found a success without it, then he can probably get away with not using it much. But yeah, you definitely, I think it's right now, it's like super important.
Totally, yeah. But I'd also, say look around this room and see who in this room, is here right now that could that you guys could work together on something. Go from there. Okay, yeah. I had another question too. This is actually a question that came off of someone online, and they said social media seems like an extrovert's paradise. Any advice for introverts, shy folks, and people who are internal processors? Like, can we win at social media?
Your sense of shame might be far too well developed. You need to lose that. I mean, really, you just do it. I mean, I actually went through that with my dad was starting up a business, and he's like, all right, I'm on social media. How to make it win for me? Well, you got to be social. And that was completely lost on him. Yeah, I mean, you have to find a way to force yourself to engage with people. That's pretty much all there is to it.
You're still like behind a screen, so you can still be sort of an introvert. I know a lot of musicians who are like great on social media, and then you meet them in person, they're like super shy. So you don't have to be like super outgoing for that.
Yeah, I mean, part of being a musician is being a performer, and that's putting yourself out there. And that can be hard, you know. It can be hard to do outside of the time that you have to be on this stage performing those songs. Like, it can be really hard for musicians to talk in between songs, you know, to just banter, to have a stage presence that's not just playing music. But I think that you can kind of look at some of social media as an extension of that, you know, figuring out what you are comfortable with sharing in terms of your personality, and maybe it doesn't have to be your face on live video doing something impromptu. You know, you can figure out some other way to kind of check that box in a way that, you know, fits your personality and your audience responds to as well.
Or, you know, you could even maybe separate it a little bit further than that. Like, it doesn't even necessarily have to be about your personality. It could be about your brand. Like, if you as a musician have a brand or a persona that you're putting out, and that's the story that you're telling with your music, just embody that in your communications on social media. Like, you know, you can still be shy and introverted, but if, you know, like for example, I have a coworker of mine who, if you meet him in person, he's super chill, really relaxed. And then you get him on stage, and he just like is up there doing like double jump kicks, and like he's awesome. And you would never expect to see that from him if you knew him in person. So, you know, just be, you know, who you are for your music online, as long as you can stay consistent with that.
Do we have anyone over there with a question? I can't tell. Is there? No. Yeah.
Yeah, lurking. Yeah, Facebook's obvious. Got to get your Facebook house in order first. But any thoughts at all on positives for AdWords as a longer game and Twitter as a more spontaneous game?
Anyone here have experience with AdWords?
AdWords is a monster. It's huge. It's you know, it's really complicated. There's a lot of factors involved with, you know, keeping your AdWords campaigns targeted, I guess. You have to know the keywords that people are using to search your site, your music, etc. Then you have, you know, there's only so many characters that you can put into your ads. It's honestly, it's probably my least, the platform that I'm least comfortable with, just for that reason, because there are so many different things that they're taking into account. And then I mean, it's an auction, so it's like, you know, you might have a keyword that you're bidding on, whatever it is, and there could be 100 other people that are bidding on the same keyword, and then you might go in and say, okay, well, this is my max amount of money that I'm willing to pay for this keyword for my ad to appear on AdWords or on Google. But if somebody else comes in and is like, well, I'm willing to pay more, then their ad's going to get shown over yours, and so then it actually becomes very competitive. There's also something called a quality score, so there are other ththings you have to take into account where, like, you know, if you have a landing page that you're sending people to from your AdWords ad, it has to be consistent with your keywords. The keywords have to appear in your ad. They have to appear in the title of the page that you're sending people to. And then they have to appear consistently on the page itself. So if none of these criteria like match, then Google will give you a low quality score, and then even if you have the highest budget, it won't show your ad. So there are a lot of factors with that one. We actually have a guy at CD Baby who's like, that's his full-time job, is just doing AdWords, PPC, SEO, that kind of stuff. And yeah, I usually defer to his expertise in that area.
I don't know if it's that good for music. You think it is? Like,
I mean, I feel like it's good if you have a really large audience that you're trying to get at. You know, it's like if you have a wide range of people that are going to be searching for something. Like in the case of CD Baby, it makes a lot of sense for us to have it because we have a lot of artists that are, a lot of people that are looking for music distribution. You know, they might be out there looking for like, what is music distribution, or how do I distribute my music, or whatever. So a keyword that we might use would be distribute or distribution, and then music. And then all over on the website or the page that we're sending people to, you know, it'll say, get your music distributed right across the top. And so we end up with good quality scores, et cetera. But we have a really large body of people that are looking for that already. And then we also have competitors in our space. And so it makes sense for us to be paying for that ad space and to stay relevant. So, because otherwise it could be that our page is SEO'd really well, and, you know, we show up at the top of Google on natural search, but, you know, if we have one of our competitors goes and has the highest bid, then their ad's going to appear just above ours, and then people click on that first because it's on the top of the list. So it just kind of depends on, again, your audience, who they are, where they're at, et cetera. But as far for independent musicians, I don't know how much I would say AdWords makes a lot of sense, just because it's for a much larger, broader audience. So yeah.
At what point do I need to hire one of you to do all this work for me? Like, you're an independent musician. You know, it's good to get a good basis in a lot of these things so you understand it for yourself. But at what point maybe would you be in a position, or, you know, how do you know if you'd be ready to take on someone to maybe do some of this work for you, or consult, or?
I mean, at the point where it becomes, at the point where it's taking time away from what you're creating. I mean, at the point where you are either so busy because of the results of your social media activity that you have to spend more time creating. I mean, then it might be time to reach out to somebody to help you with it. I mean, it's you've created some level of success using those. But now it's time to reach out to somebody to help you manage it, because it's afforded you that opportunity.
I mean, social media is always going to take time from your, you know, creating. It's always going to be time consuming, and it can be really like draining and not fun sometimes. But when you start to see good results, you'll want to keep doing it because it'll be worth it.
I mean, also, I think there's something to be said about, even if you do get to a point where you're wanting to hire somebody, you know, that doesn't mean that you should put it away altogether. Like, you should always be engaged, because nobody knows your music and your brand the way that you do, and social media is a direct link to your fans. So, I mean, I don't even know how much you would want to disengage from that.
If anyone over there with a question, feel free.
Being a photographer within the industry or a talent scout, how do you use social media to your advantage? You said earlier, Gil, that photographs don't really work in advertising. How do you make that work to your advantage to generate clients?
That's not what I meant.
Okay.
Especially if you're a photographer, then
right.
that's your product. Yeah.
Right.
I meant like I've had better results with videos because people can actually hear my music instantly, as opposed to just seeing a nice photo of me, like, you know.
Right.
And then they won't even know. Even if they hit like on my page, it doesn't mean they'll like my music. You know, I want them to hear the music right away, and based on that, decide. But if your product is a photograph, then they'll see the product, and then they'll decide, you know, if they want to follow you or not. So, yeah.
Yeah, because I struggle. That's one thing I struggle with, is being a talent scout and a photographer, trying to generate new clients to work within the local scene, whether it be national, whether it be locally. And I'm finding that the advertising or the marketing that I'm doing isn't really working. So I was wondering if there are any other tools that you guys might be able to give.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's very different with photography. You'd have to figure out who your audience is, and I have no experience with that, so I can't help you. Sorry.
I mean, I would say that I don't know how different it is from photography to music to, you know, video art. Like, for example, my husband has a visual effects studio, and it's, you know, it's art. It's a product that you're selling, and I think that as soon as musicians are able to you know, start thinking of their music as the product that they're selling. You know, they're entrepreneurs. So you create it, and then you get out there and you promote it. It's the same idea, whether it's video or photo or music or painting or classical art. It doesn't matter. It's still the idea that now you've made this thing, whatever it is, now you have to sell it. And it's all the same concepts. The audiences will be different, obviously. And then, you know, the platform of choice might be slightly different. Like, I'd say Instagram would probably be your better choice for being a photographer. I know, like, with the VFX company, that has definitely been the platform that has been getting the most response for us. But I think, you know, again, it's the same idea, regardless of what it is that you're trying to put out there.
I think you could maybe look for other photographers with a similar style, who have like massive followings, and then target people who follow those people. That could help as well.
We got another question over there.
Yeah, we're about to release our first album, and we're in this debate. Half the band wants to use CD Baby, half the band wants to use CD Baby, and the other half wants to do individual accounts with like iTunes and Spotify and all that. Can you tell me like what advantage besides convenience, what tools CD Baby offers that could help a new band coming out or a new album?
Well, I mean, just the quantity of platforms for one thing. There are a lot of those platforms that you mentioned that they won't let you create an individual account. I mean, some of them will, but most of them won't. They don't want to work with, like iTunes, for example, or Apple Music. They don't want to work individually with artists, so you have to go through an aggregator like us in order to do it. And then, managing all of those different accounts, tracking down your payments, all of that. I mean, those are the obvious advantages to working with a company like CD Baby, where it's like everything is all in one place. You can go through and sort of cherry pick which platforms you want. If you want to be on all 100 of them, you can just do that, or you can only choose certain ones if there are some that you don't want to be on for whatever reason. All the money arrives into your CD Baby account. You get paid on a weekly basis, assuming that your account reaches a minimum amount of money, which you actually select as the artist. So if you say, every time my account reaches $10, you're going to get paid weekly. If you have a week where you only make $9, then you wouldn't get paid that week. It would sit there until you reach $10 and then get paid. As far as tools, as I mentioned, we also have, our analytics tools. We, have trending reports. They'll actually tell you, how your music is trending on Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music. Analytics reports of like where are people listening to your music, who are they, etc. We have a bunch of other tools sort of attached, and it comes with like monetization on YouTube through the Content ID program. You can basically, if other people are uploading your music on their videos on YouTube, you can actually monetize their videos. And it's, I can maybe ask me about that. There's like a whole story there, but yeah, that's a really great way for artists to make music or to make money with their music. So like, if you have a bunch of fans that are taking video of you at their show or at your show, and then they're posting those videos online and it's got your music attached to it, the algorithm will find it and then monetize it on your behalf. We also have publishing services that we offer. You can actually, there's an additional amount of money that you are owed as an artist on Spotify through publishing rights, and through CD Baby Pro you have access to those. Show.co is another tool that we recently acquired that we're making available for our artists. We have easy, simplified tools for creating websites for artists. Basically the whole point of the company is to try to be a one-stop shop for artists. Like if you have the business side of your music that you're trying to do, you can create a CD Baby account and we just make it easy. If you want to sell CDs, physical distribution is also something we offer. I think we have the largest warehouse of exclusively independent music on the planet. It's out
How
by,
big?
huh?
How big?
Over 1 million discs for sure. It's pretty large. It's we're out by Airport Way here in Portland, and it's very, very large. The amount of CDs that we have, it's quite impressive.
It is impressive.
But then we, if you have fans that buy those CDs through Amazon or through cdbaby.com, or we also offer wholesale distribution with those. We handle the shipping and the payments and the customer service. If your fans have problems with the order or if they want to return it or whatever the case, whatever it is, we deal with that, and we're sort of the interface between the fans and the artists. We take care of it on your behalf.
So I'm wondering, regardless of whether you're a CD Baby musician or not, do each of you guys have some tools or resources that whether it relates to social media or just kind of like being a DIY musician? Is there other things? I mean, obviously I know CD Baby has an entire blog and conference dedicated to this topic, so there's a wealth of resources there. I'm wondering if there's anything else that you guys have come across or would like to shout out.
I bought this really expensive course by Leah McHenry, and I don't recommend it just because it's like super expensive. But I did learn quite a lot about just like Facebook marketing from it. But I think like the most valuable information is what we're sharing today, so I don't recommend it. But like the CD Baby stuff is great. Like all the there's that other guy who does like free blogs on music marketing, and he has books. Ari something, forgot his name. Yeah, he's like really good too. So you should check out his thing.
Got a question over there?
Actually, you just answered it, but thank you.
Hey, Matthew.
Well done. Hi. We opened a recording studio in Music Production House here in Portland pretty recently, just a couple months ago. You know, I've had pretty good success with my own band and music, with social media as well. One of the issues that I feel like we've kind of run into, unlike a retailer or like a restaurant or something like that with a studio, is the amount of money that people have to spend, but it's building that reputation and trust is kind of the hardest thing right now. You know, a lot of times in the music community, it's all based on like word of mouth and, you know, a recommendation from a band or from a venue or something like that. So, I mean, is there any way, you know, starting out as a recording studio, you know, I mean, just asking people, you know, come in or just posting content, I feel like we're not building that reliability, we're not building that trust kind of with the music community, because it's so, you know, tight-knit, you know, unless someone has, you know, great things to say directly to, you know, someone they know. I mean, is there anything, you know, you guys would recommend with trying to build that base, you know, kind of starting from zero?
I would say, I think it depends on how you're using the social media platforms. Like if you're using them to just put the word out that you exist, I think you're right. I don't think you're going to get as far. But if you start, say, hosting events at your studio, I mean, your goal is to get people in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Host events at your studio. It doesn't even necessarily have to be about, you know, actually recording music. It could just be a party, or it could just be, you know, find another event that's happening. You know, if there's like some sort of music festival that's happening in town, your Music Fest Northwest or something, and then throw a party attached to it, and then use social media to get the word out about the party. Then you get people into your space. You have the opportunity to wow them, to make them feel good about the experience, and then you can create word of mouth promotion by getting people to then leave and say, oh yeah, I went there, I had a great time, and they tell all their friends. So that's what I would say.
Perfect. Thank you.
Or like host like bands, do like live videos in your studio. That could be great. Great way to, yeah, like the Rye Room. Just spread the word that way.
Awesome.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. So if you're looking at specifically like Instagram, for instance, on building an audience, and say you've already gained an audience on like Facebook or another platform, and you're trying to reach people beyond just friends and family or fans that have come to the show, at what point do you think, or would you have advice on kind of like, besides like purging old content that hasn't been engaged with, like what do you suggest doing to kind of boost that, besides, I don't know, maybe like rebranding? Like what I don't know, what do you have in mind for that?
I'm not sure I understood the question.
Oh, sorry. I guess it's kind of, I guess the question really is like, at what point, from what you're learning, are you building, and at what point would it be like noise, like old content, basically? Like how do you kind of build from what you've already established?
Well, are you asking like whether you should like use old content again? Is that?
Yeah, I guess, is it relevant to keep old content if it's not?
Keep it up there for sure. Like, why not? Unless you feel like it doesn't represent what you do anymore, or like that it's hurting your reputation somehow. But yeah, I would keep the old stuff and just work on new and better stuff all the time. Just try to improve all the time. And you know, you can repost older stuff. Every once in a while, I like share one of my older videos again, and it'll get a bunch of new views, which is nice. But just focus on like just like looking ahead and like creating new stuff all the time.
Also, I think there's something to be said. You know, I run into a lot of musicians that, you know, they sort of get hung up on, oh, that album is old, or that content is old. Like that's, you know, that's so 2 years ago. But the thing is in a digital world, like everything has the potential to be new for someone. Like there was one time not that long ago where I like heard some song on Pandora and was like, wow, this is so cool. And I was like showing a friend of mine, was like, this song is so cool, like it's like my new jam right now. And she was like, oh yeah, my sister was into that in high school like 10 years ago. And it was new for me. I'd never heard of it. So I would say that, you know, nothing is old. And also, never post anything on the internet that you don't want to live forever, because even if you try to make it disappear, it will never, ever disappear.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd say we run into a bad habit with the press of always wanting something new, you know, like always wanting to talk about new things. It's kind of like Apple feeling like they have to put out a new iPhone every year, even though we don't necessarily need it. You know, so if you're actually really focused on building that community that wants to authentically engage with you, it doesn't matter if you put the song out 10 years ago. You know, maybe I never heard it when you put it out 10 years ago, but I'm a fan of your work, you know. You see that with a lot of legacy artists, you know, when they reissue their vinyl, you know, and it sells out because that's old music, you know. It came out 25 years ago, but they have that fan base to support that still wants to hear that. Or, you know, it's somewhat updated, remastered, new content to go along with the old, you know. So there's always ways that you could take something old and freshen it up again, or potentially reach someone new with something old.
Actually, that song "Hey There, Delilah" was released years before it ever came out again, and it sucked the first time they released it, and then it came out again and it blew up.
Still sucks.
Yeah, well, I agree with you, Gil, but the second time it blew up, you know what I'm saying? So timing can be a big thing for content. So for those of you that use all of these social media platforms, because, I mean, all of you guys have probably noticed trends and just, you're like, oh, that's funny, like, right? And so, like, I usually just notice patterns that happen just by nature of using the damn platforms, right? And so, what trends have you noticed? And also, like, some of these platforms, their main focus is discovery, and like my goal as an artist who's thinking in business mind when I'm in there is like, how do I find people who I don't even know they would like my music, right? I can't possibly make them Google search for me, so that's why AdWords is out. Like, unless they probably heard my name, but then what good is an AdWord, because they would actually be searching my band's name directly, right? So AdWords need to find people who wouldn't normally search for you. So in other words, like which platforms have you found work best for finding people that wouldn't probably normally have heard your music, but they all of a sudden discovered it, you know?
Yeah, Facebook.
Facebook.
I think is best for that still, even though a lot of people are saying that Facebook is dying and all that. I don't think that's true. They still have like 2 billion users on there, which is like a third of the world population. I guess if you're targeting like teenagers, maybe Instagram and Snapchat are better, because I've heard that like teenagers are not signing up for Facebook anymore. Maybe that's wrong. I don't know. But like my target audience is people like in their 20s and 30s, and they're all on Facebook, so it makes sense for me to use that. And using the ads, you know, I can get like one of my videos in front of them on their feed, and then they can watch it instantly. So I think that's the best way to get people to discover your stuff.
The other thing too is Facebook actually will, like, you can connect your Facebook page to your Instagram account, and then through the ads manager you can click, you know, send this ad to Instagram, and then you can just 2 birds with 1 stone with your paid advertising.
But have you noticed one's better than another for discovery and for like the purpose of finding someone who'd never heard that music before?
Yeah, I discover a lot of cool artists on Facebook all the time, you know. And it's usually in the form of a video, because if it's like just a link or like buy my album, I'm never going to click on that, you know, if I've never heard of the band. But if it's a cool live video, you know, and the nice thing about Facebook is that the videos autoplay, so even if I don't really feel like watching it, it'll start playing anyway, so I'll be like, oh, what the hell, you know, I'll watch it. So that really makes a huge difference. Yeah, and I think you can do the same thing on Instagram, but you have to keep your videos short, under 1 minute, for that to work.
Also, I think going back to what you were saying earlier about Spotify, you know, Spotify in and of itself can be treated like a social platform, and it can be used for music discovery. So I think that, you know, building a strategy on Spotify is also a good way to start building an audience.
Yeah, definitely second that with Spotify. And Spotify has like a pretty wide reach, you know, no matter, like basically it services all genres and styles of music. I think SoundCloud is a great platform. It can tend to service, you know, certain stylistic styles of music, you know. And another thing too is, this is totally anecdotally, but I think the kids these days, like they're consuming so much of their media on YouTube and their music on YouTube. YouTube is a huge source of discovery, like SoundCloud, like Spotify, there are these autoplay features, and I don't know, it's going to take some research to figure out how you get, your music to play immediately after someone really targeted, but there is potential for that there. Got a question over here?
Yeah. Thank you guys for sharing with us. My question is about sponsorship, and if you have anything to share about sponsorship, maybe for touring or in general, and if there's a point in time when you, first off, if you recommend it, and also if there's a point in time where like you reach out for it, or if it's more about like building your fan base and then being in a situation where people will want to come to you.
I haven't done any like sponsored tours, so I have received like some endorsements from brands, but they're not like giving me money, like a budget for anything. They're just like giving me discounts on their gear, so it's not quite the same thing.
I think maybe, doing like a Kickstarter type campaign could be an interesting route to go. I mean, it's not quite the same as sponsorship, but it's something that you can sort of harness the power of your audience to fund a tour if that's sort of what you're interested in. We've had artists that have been very successful at that. You get 1,000 people to donate $20, and that's a lot of money. So I can math. What is that?
I mean,
2,000?
I think
19 cents.
Not good with math.
You could look into Patreon as well. I haven't used it yet, but it's this platform where people basically can give you $2 for every video you make, or per month, or something like that. And a lot of YouTubers, their entire income, or most of it, comes from Patreon. So it's something you can look into if you put out content all the time on a regular basis.
I think it's like Gil said earlier, when he's thinking about what his audience wants before he posts it, what they would be interested in, you got to take that same mentality if you're going to someone else, asking for a sponsorship. I wouldn't say that if you don't ask for it, you're not going to get it. People may come to you if you've demonstrated to have, such a following or demand or something like that. But again, whether you're talking about sponsorship or trying to get booked at a gig or, trying to get a music licensing firm to be interested in you, you really got to put yourself in their shoes first and think about what they want, what they would want to see to really be interested. So you make have a good chance with that opportunity that you do have when you ask.
You'd probably need a big following to begin with just to get a sponsorship anyway, so I wouldn't focus on that. I'd focus on just building your following, and then that kind of stuff will just come as it grows.
Go ahead.
I kind of had this question with Gil in mind, but I'd be interested to hear what everyone thinks on this. A lot of times we're working ahead of ourselves a couple weeks, a month, 3 months, half a year. As far as posting consistently, let's say maybe you're posting a video every 2 weeks, just whatever. How far ahead of yourself are you actually looking at your social media? Are you 3 months ahead of yourself? Of course, posting an important video right before an event is good, but I mean, I'm just curious, how you're managing your workload.
Well, right now I've got the whole year planned, but it's probably going to change, just based on feedback and and other gigs I'll probably get that I don't know about yet.
Yeah. What are you doing tomorrow? Just kidding.
Nothing. Want to have lunch? Yeah, it's good to plan ahead, but always stay flexible because things are going to change anyway.
Cool, yeah. So this may be an ignorant question, but I've heard you mention it a couple of times now, and that's my band's called The Breaking, and we have our music up on Spotify, but this is literally the first I've heard is actually using it as a social platform. Can you speak a little bit more as to how that works, using Spotify more as a social media platform than as just a tool, a vessel for your music like iTunes?
Yeah, so I mean, on Spotify, you can create playlists yourself as a user. They can be open or not. You can create shared playlists, which are open, to where you can add music to it, but so can anybody else, which can be an interesting way to to get people to interact with you on Spotify. And then same thing for you as a person. There are other people that have open playlists that you can get access to and go and add your music to it. Actually, if you go to CDBaby, members.cdbaby.com, we actually have a really great guide that's free and downloadable as soon as you give us your email address. And it's got a really great outline of really best practices for creating a strategy for building your presence on Spotify. You know, things like when you're building a playlist, there are certain things you should take into account, like the amount of songs that are on the playlist. Another thing that people I don't think people realize and don't really take advantage of or know to do is that, you know, once you build a playlist on Spotify, you can't just let it sit. It can't just become static. It's something that you have to be constantly changing and updating and moving things around, you know, because Spotify's algorithms reward activity, and they reward when people like or share your playlist or your song. And so the more you can get people on Spotify to be adding your music to their playlist or sharing, etc., the more your music is going to be rewarded. It'll be included in, you know, what you were talking about. Sorry, I didn't catch your name. About like the AI and the algorithms that they have, you know, in terms of being included in the Discover Weekly, and, you know, like, oh, if you like this song, then you'll like that song. And so there's like a whole strategy around building that presence and staying engaged, and not just, and, you know, like reaching out to people who are owners of other playlists. You know, one of the big questions I get is, well, how do I do that? It's not like you can just go onto Spotify and click send message to this playlist owner. But one of the things you can do is, you know, a little bit of internet stalking. You can take the name of the playlist, put it into Google, maybe find their Twitter account, find them on Facebook. Because, you know, if you have a large playlist that has a big following, chances are they have other social media presence. And then you can reach out to them on those platforms and to open a dialogue. And, you know, don't just go right out the gate with like, hey, I really like your playlist, you should add my music to it. You have to kind of like wine and dine them a little bit, you know, talk to them. You know, get to know them a little bit, build a little bit of a rapport, and then, you know, maybe then slide in and say, you know, see if you can get them to listen to your music. They might even just come out and say, I really like your stuff, I want to add it to my playlist. And, you know, start small. If you have, you know, 10 followers on Spotify, don't go to that playlist that has 500,000 followers and try to get your music on there. Like, start a little bit smaller, build your way up, you know, and then eventually the holy grail is that you get your music picked up by an official Spotify curator, and then it gets put onto like an official Spotify playlist. And when that happens, then you've made it big.
Cool, thank you.
Super quick question. Does CD Baby, like, to get the metrics from Spotify, you have to have 250 followers on Spotify? Does CD Baby bypass that when you
That is no longer the case.
Really? You can get it with
Yes,
hot
you
diggity.
can become Spotify what's the term?
Artist?
Verified artist, that's it. And you don't need to have 250 followers anymore.
Oh, well, that's awesome.
So there's something, verified artists. What does that mean? What does that matter on different platforms? A little blue check mark, right?
I don't have any of those. I don't know how you get them, and I don't care. Doesn't really change anything.
But with Spotify in particular, you go to Spotify for Artists and you follow the process of getting verified, and they have it all sort of laid out step by step there. And then once you have that, you have access to do things like edit your Spotify profile and sort of customize it a little bit, take control of it, kind of thing. And then, you know, I lost my train of thought. Customize your profile. Get access to like reports, trending, that kind of thing, through Spotify itself. Although the ones on CD Baby are a little bit better.
Does anyone else know any other advantages or of being verified on other platforms?
Once again, I don't think there's any way to get verified by, like, Facebook used to have this form where you could like apply for the blue check mark, but you can't do that anymore, so it doesn't really matter. Because
I know on Instagram, this is one thing that I just recently discovered. To get verified on Instagram, there's some steps you have to follow, but from everything I can tell, basically you have to have a significant amount of followers in order to do this. But once you are verified, the benefit is that you can actually put links on individual posts on Instagram, whereas as it stands right now, you can only have links in your description. So like if you post something, a video or whatever, and you want to like use that post to say, hey, you want to see the rest of this video, go to this website and see it. You can't do that right now. It will not hyperlink the link.
But you can still do that through Facebook ads anyway, so.
Yeah, and I mean, again, Instagram, put the link in the bio. Like, don't put the URL unless it's like a really super simple URL. Put the link in the bio and try to get people to click that way. No one's gonna. You
Go
can't
to
copy and paste.
http://
You can't copy and paste on
325.
Instagram. So we got a question over there. Go for it.
Yeah, I'm wondering, we've been talking a lot about different social media, but then what would be the best content to put on your website itself? Or how can you talk about use of your website as opposed to or in conjunction with social media?
I post like whenever I have like a new video or some new gig or news. I'll post on the news portion. Obviously, keep my gig schedule up to date on the website. Post some new photos once in a while. But that's it. I just try to keep it up to date, so when someone does visit the website, they'll see like the latest bit of news. But yeah, that's it basically. It's obviously like I get way more traffic on my social media pages than my official website.
Okay. And Tracy?
I think there's something to be said about, your website is very important because with any social media platform, Facebook in particular, we'll use this sort of the example, you don't own the audience. You could build a huge following on Facebook, and then Facebook could change your algorithm next week, and suddenly if you want to reach that audience, you have to pay. And how much you pay is just entirely determined by them. You have no control over that. Whereas Facebook, or your website is your own web property. You own it. So I think there's something to be said about making sure that you're using social media to drive people to your website. Whether it's get their email address and build, a database of people that you can then talk to. Because, if you have somebody who's willing to give you their email address and that person wants to know about what you're doing. Versus and then also there's something to be said too about if you're a band that only has a presence on social media and doesn't have a website, I think there's a little bit of a legitimacy issue. I think bookers and other people in the music industry are going to take a band a little bit more seriously that has a professional looking website as opposed to only a Facebook page. It also makes it so that you're more findable. If somebody Googles you and they're looking for information about your band, having a website and it's properly SEO'd and set up, it's going to pop up. It's going to make you look real legit. But as far as content, ideally, if you have a blog article or a post or something that you would be sharing that on social media. And what I always try to do is rather than even just putting the content directly on social media, that obviously has a place, but I think it's also really important to make sure that you're putting the content on your website first and then putting it on social media and trying to drive people to your website, because you can't control the experience that people have. Even on YouTube, you put your content there, and then what do they get as soon as they're done consuming your video? Recommendations for other videos that you have no control over, and they're not necessarily your videos. Whereas if you're driving people to your website and you can say, check out my video, check out my article, whatever it is, you're controlling that experience 100%. It's definitely a more strategic way to go.
Got it.
So the nice thing about YouTube now is that you can have this end screen where you can put links to other videos or your website, and for the last 20 seconds of the video, people will see those links, which is useful. And obviously a call to action like subscribe, and that really helps. Or just get this song, and then they takes them to the email list sign up form.
And perhaps in addition, maybe more for Dan, but regarding getting radio airplay and how to work that, and then how do you use social media for that as opposed to against that, or is that strictly just old school, you're going back to doing it personally? And
radio airplay is always going to be based on the fact that you've already created an audience, that you've already got a respectable audience. There's already enough people to want to hear it that radio can capitalize on that and work with you on it. So it's not really a matter of getting on the radio so they can help you build this. It's you've already built something that radio wants to be a part of. So you're still using social media to build your audience. You're still trying to show that what you're doing is connecting with people.
Yeah, commercial radio can be a tough nut to crack. Vortex does, we go in kink once a week and we play a song from a local artist. So again, it has to fit that kink format though, but we're always, accepting submissions from stuff like that, so you can reach out. But locally, community radio, I'm sure that anyone in this room could connect you with someone that's either on X-Ray, PRP.
PRP are right there.
PRP right over
There's
here.
Luke.
You go talk to them.
I know, yeah.
Talk to Luke over there. Or KBOO, those are all community radio stations in town. There's also a lot of other local or not even non-local internet radio stations. So all those people have built up some amount of audience that they already have, and yeah, I know for a fact PRP would be happy to talk to you right here. Back to the idea of like, it's really important to own, whatever of your own assets you can. Like, we are all reliant on social media in some way, but just being conscious of how you use that. CD Baby has a bunch of resources for that. There's another Portland group called Cash Music, which has a ton of resources and tools that they build out as well that help independent artists realize how they can own some of their own assets as well. So it's really important to be conscious of how much you're leaning on a platform that you don't necessarily have control of. And I guess from a press point of view, Gil has a great website. If you guys should all go on it and check it out. He's like meticulously documented everything that he's done. So whether
everything I eat as well.
Let's say that again.
Everything I eat.
Yeah.
No, it's okay.
So from a media standpoint or from a booker standpoint, you can really easily go on his website and see what kind of accomplishments he has had. Like where he started and where he's gotten to. And I think that's really important for, especially if you're trying to get booked locally around town. You need to show growth, and you need to show that you have an audience and stuff like that. So your personal website is a really great place for that, because a lot of local bookers will tell you that like it might not really, they want to see that you're active on social media and doing something, but like your numbers on social media is not the end all be all for why you're going to get booked for a gig locally. So having a website, having that look professional, having easy access to music, it can also be a resource for you to make sales, sell merch and things like that. It's like really important to own all of that stuff yourself.
Cool, thank you.
Never seen you before.
I know, I'm sorry, I have so many questions. Well, actually, I was sort of curious about non-traditional social media. So like one of my favorite stories is from Simon Tam, how he built a Yelp profile and then got like 10,000 followers because he liked sushi. And then, but that he pushed that into the slants somehow. He's like a wizard. But like, have you guys used, we've been talking about Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat and all that, but has there been any, other than the big, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 there, have you guys used any other social media platforms like Yelp or whatever and generated fans from maybe stuff you're interested in, but it's not necessarily something in Facebook? Or, I don't know.
LinkedIn could be an interesting one to try. It's actually on my list. I haven't actually tried it yet with advertising. I looked into it. It's absurdly expensive, but depending, again, your audience, LinkedIn could be a really great way to target industry professionals. Maybe you're looking to get booked. Maybe you're looking to, if somebody mentioned something about sponsorships, finding the ad execs that would be doing the sponsoring. LinkedIn would be a good way to attack those people. But that being said, you would, LinkedIn has a very specific voice, so you would need to make sure that your advertisements fit that voice. And again, it's also really expensive from what I could tell, so I haven't done it yet.
And I think that like, we use the Simon Tam example, you're talking about just like being creative, whether that's online or offline, so again, like thinking about like, how you're trying to represent yourself, what kind of message you're trying to put out there. And like, I'm sure that you guys can all think of like a super creative way to promote yourself that is not boosting, and it might be more authentic and a genuine connection that you can create with people.
Hi. Let's say you have 2 hours in a week to do marketing for getting placements for your music. What percentage of that would you devote to trying to attract a licensing company as opposed to, stalking music supervisors of projects that use, music that's similar to yours? Like on, stalking them on Twitter or email?
I've pretty much stopped doing that in general, just like stalking people and like harassing them, because I just find that it's better to focus on just building a real following and connection with people instead of just trying to get others to like, instead of just trying to like get press and radio to like find your audience for you. just try to do it directly. And obviously, you know, it's still great to we have some amazing local press and radio here in Portland, which is nice. But when it comes to licensing, I don't know, I haven't done a lot of that. Everything that I've had through licensing has just been people reached out to me. So I don't know. Sorry.
I mean, just like you're trying to find an audience, again, you just got to put yourself in their shoes and be careful on the stalking, kind of like some people that you're reaching out to, you might only have one chance to really reach out to them. And again, you want to make sure that you're communicating to people in a way that is relevant to them, So you're looking at the work that they're doing or the types of music that they're interested in, and know that what you're telling them is aligned with what they want to hear, what they might be interested in.
Sure.
That being said, there is a fine line between being relevant and showing that you've done your homework on researching them, and also being a little creepy.
Yeah, well, I said stalking jokingly. I just meant
but I mean from personal experience as a marketer, I get other marketing services or platforms that are trying to get at me as their target audience because they want to sell me their marketing service, for example. And some of them have gotten really deep into my LinkedIn profile, and some of the messages that I get from them, for just as an anecdotal example, I have my LinkedIn profile. I said something to the effect of having survived a bowl of Japanese natto, which I don't know if anybody have ever had it. It's fermented soybeans and it's awful. And so this company actually sent me a jar of natto.
Right.
And it just sort of showed up at my desk one day, and I was like, what?
Right.
So clearly they did their homework. It was a little creepy.
Okay. Now that I'm the creep, I'll sit down.
All right, so we got about 5 minutes left. So if you have a burning question, make sure you get it in. But I've got something for you guys that kind of dovetails off of something that someone posted online in one of the comments. And, they had said, Facebook announced some changes to the algorithm in January to focus more on people, on individuals, real people on Facebook versus brands and, artist pages and things like that. So I guess my question kind of is, how much do you blur the line between what you're doing on your artist page and then do that same stuff on your personal page as well, or are they strictly separate, or what kind of experiences have you guys had?
Well, at first I would post the same thing on my personal, everything I posted on my page I'd post on the personal as well. Now I'm doing less of that because I find that it can be kind of annoying for my friends to only see self-promotion stuff in my videos all the time. But obviously when I have new content, I share it with my friends as well. But I'll share the link to my from my actual page to drive more traffic to there. As far as the new algorithm thing, I haven't felt any difference in terms of my ads and stuff like that. But I don't know, we'll see.
So you're paying for the ads.
Yeah, but they said that they're going to favor more personal stuff from friends as opposed to ads too, I think. No, I don't know.
Just seems slightly oxymoronic on their part that they are simultaneously wanting people to be paying for ads more while also downgrading the amount they're going to be showing the ads. It's kind of, I don't quite understand it myself, but from what I've read, they're basically just trying to make sure that the way that your ads or brands in general are interacting with people is more authentic and less contrived. So less clickbait. They're going to be really downplaying the clickbait practices. Facebook Live, things that are more authentic, they're going to be giving more precedent to, or more play of that content than other content. And I think one of the ways that Facebook sort of does that is based on reaction in real time. So if you post something and you post it at midnight or something, and that's an hour of the day that your audience is typically in bed, and nobody likes it for the first couple of hours, that post is basically just going to vanish. It's going to get buried in the onslaught of Facebook. But if you post something at noon when everybody's awake and they're at lunch and they're engaged on their Facebook and they see it and everybody starts liking it, the more people like it immediately within a certain amount of time after it's been posted, and the more people share it, the more it's going to get shown to people. Knowing that when you're engaging with your audience, also what is a good time to be posting. But I think that sort of stuff is what Facebook is going to be putting more emphasis on. Now, how they are deciding what is clickbait and what is more authentic, I'm not 100% sure how they're going to be doing that, because then that gets really subjective, because where one person might say, oh, that's awful clickbait, another person might think it's really great. So how their algorithm is doing that, I'm not 100% sure. And again, that kind of goes back to the idea of don't put all your eggs in that basket, because they might just change something, and if you don't understand how to take advantage of it, then you just lost your audience.
Just want to add something. Sorry. One way to get more engagement on your post is to ask for some kind of feedback. So, like if you're posting like a new demo of a new song, it's a little video, you can be like, "What do you guys think I should call this song?" or just something like that. Then you'll get a lot more comments, and Facebook will see that people are engaging and show it to more people. So, asking for some kind of feedback is great.
That being said, those posts that you see that are like, enter my contest, like, share, comment, or whatever to get entered into this contest, that's the kind of content that they're actually going to be downplaying, that sort of clickbait stuff. So.
But algorithms shouldn't change the way that you interact with your audience, and you should always respond to comments or questions. If somebody shares your content, you're doing it at a level you're still able to respond to those. You know, a quick thank you for sharing a comment on that shared post. I mean, you should always be going out of your way to engage with these people that have shown an interest in what you do, and that's the kind of stuff that'll make you show up in the more organic timeline that Facebook is trying to develop.
Yeah, and I mean, a little follow-up to Gil, too, is like, you got to sometimes ask people to do something. They're not just going to do it without you asking them. So, you know, he's given an example to me in the past of, you know, putting that call to action at the end of his video. Like, you like this content? You know, subscribe now, or here's how you get more. Like, being really clear and direct. Like, you're not going to be pushy about it, but just if they liked it the first time, you know, they might want to receive more of it. So tell them how they can receive more of it. Look at your analytics on Facebook. It's really easy. There's like an insights tab, and that tells you what time of day people are active. Like, you don't have to be any kind of expert to just read that chart real quick. And like Tracy said, you'll know when is the optimal time to actually post some content. And I had something else that I lost.
So one of the platforms that nobody has mentioned at all that seems to work well, or has really worked well for me in both stats and being able to connect to, say, your website when you're building a website so you don't have to have content sitting on your site, is Reverb Nation. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on a platform like Reverb Nation.
I've never used it. It just seems like another one of these websites that's very similar to like the other stuff we have already, so I didn't really feel a need to put my stuff on it. But, you know, if you're having success with that, then great, just stick with it.
Yeah, I just didn't know if...
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's obviously an audience there on Reverb Nation. You know, it's like Facebook has the biggest audience, but if you found a place that works for you, again, just thinking about how you leverage that audience, you know, so let's say the rules of Reverb Nation change or it goes away one day, how can you still retain that audience, you know, to be able to communicate to them when you have an upcoming show or new music or whatever, you know. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of platforms, there's a ton of platforms that are going to come and go, and just thinking about how you can own that asset.
I was curious about when you create a Facebook ad, do you try to achieve like a certain amount of organic engagement before you create that post into an ad, or do you just start it off as an ad?
Well, I keep my page posts separate from the ad, so the ad is not something that shows up on my page. It's just, right now it's just one of my videos with a very short description, caption being like, hey, if you want to see more of this, like my page. Obviously the goal is page likes, so it shows up with this big like button that people can easily click on, and I target people like a lookalike audience right now, and that just works great. And then I don't create ads with like my page content. You know, maybe like every once in a while I'll you know, pay like $5-10 just for more people to see it if it's something that's really important to me, but generally I keep those things separate.
Going back to the old days 3 months ago, it used to be that, you know, doing that, like posting it and then getting the organic play of that particular piece of content made sense, because like, why pay for those shares or likes when you are going to get them for free? But now I would say that it's better to just go right out the gate with the promotion, just because, again, Facebook will favor it it will give priority to those to that content that gets liked, shared, commented on quickly right after it's posted.
Is there anyone else over there waiting to ask questions?
I mean, I think it also depends on what your goal is, though. Like, if it's just to get views on your video, I don't think it's worth just spending money on everything, every bit of content. If it's like a campaign to get emails or, your latest album you're trying to sell or something like that, then it's probably worth, like, having a budget for a campaign. Just for video views, I would not worry about it. I would just, once again, if you continuously post quality content, the views will be accumulated.
So yeah, I want to give a couple shout outs. First, thank you to all of our panelists here, Dan, Gil, and Tracy. And thank you to Jason Fellman of J Fell Presents, my partner in putting these on. It's also the Mogo Music Festival. And to Audio Globe, who has been killing it live streaming this right now. So we'll recap that and put it up on the website as well, and you guys can all revisit this content. And thanks to so many other people that I see here in the audience that have supported the promotion and creation of this event, and to PRP for coming today, and Burn Money Music, and I'm sure there's so many other of you here in the audience. I also wanted to say, if you guys all pick up a copy of the magazine, we had an article with Gil in there that kind of breaks down a bunch of social media tips that we've gone over today, probably a few other things that him and I chatted about. We also had these three on a podcast called The Future of What, which is also linked in that article online. So I would highly recommend checking that out every week for tons of new content about being an indie musician. Just kind of to wrap it up, guys, I was wondering if you have any final closing thoughts, words of wisdom that you would like to offer.
Social media, be social, be engaged, take every opportunity that you can to connect with the people that are attempting to connect with you or show some interest in what it is that you do. I mean, it's really as simple as that. I mean, there's all the ad platforms and everything you get into on top of that, but I mean, really, that's just the next level of it. You have to start at that base place.
Yeah, and make some time for it every day, or just as much as you can. And just, accept the fact that you're probably not going to enjoy it most of the time. It's work, but it can be really rewarding.
And, if your campaigns don't necessarily go the way that you thought they would, try to learn something from it and then take it and move on with that lesson and try it again. Don't give up.
Oh, and I do have one more analog real-world shout-out as well. I'm working with a group as well called Music Portland, which you go to musicportland.org. And we are looking to create more connections through musicians and music industry businesses here in the city of Portland. So musicportland.org, we have a census that just asks you basically to raise your hand, say that you are a musician living and working in this community, and we're collecting your email address so we can follow up with you later on more things that we're working on. But thank you all very much for coming. This is an amazing conversation. Thank you to my panelists. And we'll be doing another one of these in the springtime as well.
Thanks, Chris.
Who wants to live in a world where so many people who don't even know I exist wish me to fall to